We have the fattest place on Earth.
Thank God.
Yeah, and you know, let's just go to the video. I don't want to give it away, but
and then my theories on how they got that fat.
All right.
On top of the evidence.
At first glance, Nauru looks like a picture postcard, palm-fringed South Seas paradise. Laid back, slow-paced, sun-kissed. But this is a tiny island of great extremes. First of all, its location. Nauru lies somewhere between Hawaii and Australia, a tiny potato-shaped speck in the Pacific Ocean. This counts as a very busy day on Nauru. The police force, I think in its entirety, on parade for the visit of a Spanish diplomat. And we're going to drive around the whole country. Let's see how long it takes. We hired a car and drove round the entire island, all 8.1 square miles of it. Nauru is the smallest independent republic on Earth. The nearest neighbour, Kiribati, is 400 miles of empty ocean away. The population of Nauru, barely 10,000 souls. Okay, that was it. That was the whole country. We hit some traffic because the schools were letting out, and it took us 17 and a half minutes. A small island, but her people are big. Very big. Nauru is the fattest country on Earth. 95% of adults are officially overweight. 85% of men are clinically obese. But it wasn't always this way. It wasn't this way until Nauru began importing Western food. Half of adult Nauruans now suffer type 2 diabetes, an insulin resistance that leads to high blood sugar and all the problems that can cause.
They lose limbs, they have heart failures, liver, renal failures, and they lose their eyesight, and it's a terrible, debilitating disease.
Nauru has the highest prevalence of diabetes on this planet. They are quite literally eating themselves to death.
All right, we get it. It's an interesting report. I'm into it, but the reporter is driving me nuts. He is driving me nuts.
Sun kiss. All right. First of all, they speak excellent English. Every minister, that report was much longer, right? Every minister was like, geez, Lord mercy. They are close. You saw it, relatively close to Australia, that's why. And that health minister reminded me a little of my cousin and a little of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Random, super random. Anyway, so now we move on to reality. All right, so why are they so large? One, it's because they were hunter-gatherers before, right? And they say that in the story, and the locals say that. And what happened is they found some minerals on the island, right? And that wound up making them rich. And they became the second wealthiest country per capita in the world. That happened in the 1980s. Now, of course, all of that has been sucked out of the island, not all of it, but most of it, to the point where they're now back to being poor. But in the meanwhile, they can now afford Western food. So they start gobbling up the Western food, and come to find out it's got a lot of fat in it, it's got this in it, it's got that in it, and they wind up in this kind of shape. Right now they're trying to lose the weight, and etc. Right? So now those are all the obvious reasons why they're. But no, I have an additional theory. Okay. Now a lot of these folks from the islands, Samoans, etc. A lot of them get disproportionately large percentage of them become overweight.
Right.
Okay.
That's true.
Right. Why is that? My guess, educated guess, is that on those islands, since they were tiny islands with no one near them for 400 miles, sometimes they would have significant food shortages, and their bodies evolved to the point where they were able to survive better with less fat, right?
So their body would basically absorb that fat and store it. Their bodies would store that
exactly,
fat.
right? So they would need less food to be able to survive. But if you take that kind of body and then you fill it up with a normal amount of food, well, then they wind up storing a lot of fat, right? And if you take the Western food and then give that to them and they have a lot of money and they get all the Western food, then it becomes the fattest place on Earth. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Good theory?
I think it's a good theory.
Right.
But you also, I mean, it's important to also keep in mind that Western food is so disastrously fattening that, yeah, Nauru might be, the fattest place on earth, but places like the United States are quickly catching up.
Yes, at one point they explained that the one in 10 Americans have the problem with diabetes, and that people say by 2050 it could be 1 in 3 that we're catching up to Nauru, et cetera. Look, it's partly the food, but it's also partly their genetic makeup. So it's a potent combination for them, and so I think that's part of it. And by the way, I cooked up that theory while watching the Wild Samoans at the WWF when I was a kid. I was like, they're larger than others. And then, as you see, a lot of the islanders have those issues.
Right.
You know what? And if you're an islander and now everybody eats the same food, that kind of sucks. You know what I'm saying? Because not just because you don't meet the quote-unquote global cultural definition of what is desirable these days, and you can screw that, but you really have health problems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was talking about diabetes in that clip, and that's a huge issue in the United States as well. So. Right.
And by the way, if you are going to overgeneralize based on my theories, don't. Okay. And these are just really broad ideas, obviously. Obviously, that doesn't apply to all islanders. Please don't make me say obvious things, okay?